The newly formed Taconic and Green Regional School District held its first annual meeting at the Floodbrook School in Londonderry on Tuesday, February 27th, drawing more than 100 residents from the 9-town area the school district serves. The new district, formed as a result of the Act 46 School Consolidation Statute, includes what on July 1st will be the former school districts of Manchester, Dorset, Sunderland, Danby, Mount Tabor, and the Mountain Towns Regional District that includes Landgrove, Peru, Londonderry, and Weston. Towards the start of the roughly 90-minute-long meeting, Jacqueline Wilson, the school superintendent of the Bennington-Rutland Supervisory Union, of which the Taconic and Green Regional District is a part, announced that the recently formed Medowee School District, which includes Rupert and Paulet, has been officially accepted by the state's Agency of Education as a side-by-side district with the Taconic and Green District. Wilson described some of the educational initiatives underway in the Taconic and Green schools and where some of the early focus may be headed.
So we're transitioning from that traditional way of teaching and learning that most of us experienced to what we're calling proficiency-based learning. And it really is a deeper way of looking at learning. Many of us, when we went to school, if you did it okay in school, you went to college, you're probably going to be okay with getting a job. Your trajectory was pretty straight. That's not the case anymore. You probably have heard that statistic that 65% of the jobs that kids will do that are now entering first grade, we don't even know what they are yet. So our world has changed dramatically. And our school system is still many of them are still stuck in that industrial model of how we educate kids, and we're not preparing kids to work in industry anymore. So we're really, really focusing on what do we need to do differently so that our kids are creative problem solvers, they're self-directed, that they are incredibly strong communicators, that they can innovate and reinvent themselves many times because they will in their career. Those days of having the same career for years are gone.
The two main items on the warning that drew the most attention from the audience in terms of questions were an article that called for approving a tuition rate of slightly more than $17,000 for Burr&Burton Academy, and another that sought approval of the new regional district's proposed budget, which totaled more than $31 million, or roughly the combined total of all the several soon-to-be former districts combined. Mark Tashian, the headmaster at Burr&Burton, addressed the audience and argued the case for approving the BBA tuition amount.
So Burr&Burton exists, and all our facilities exist through private philanthropy. We never have floated a public bond and asked the public to pay that bond back. And instead, what we do is raise money privately through some tremendously generous donors, expanding our facilities, expanding our technology, and hopefully being a school, not that's just great today, but as we move into the future, that continues to rethink education and rethink the needs of education so that 10 years from now, I can stand before you and describe a different school that's evolved in every appropriate way into the future. So the bottom line is, I'm a little biased, but I think what we have is an extraordinary educational institution and an extraordinary financial relationship that means that you as taxpayers and you as voters get a really, really good deal. You get tremendous value for the dollars spent on tuition.
Some members of the audience did have questions for him, nevertheless.
In the past, since 2011, your tuition has gone up 25%. The cost of the inflation rate was 12.5%, and the CPI, which is what determines how much more we get in our Social Security checks, was 8.3%. So, I mean, it's creeping up versus you. It costs right now, it costs 13% more to send a kid to Burr&Burton than it does to UVM. Can you tell me how that makes sense?
What we try to be is a school that can serve a tremendous range of students. There's no question, there is no question that if we focused on reading, writing, arithmetic, and simplified, we could be cheaper. I would argue strenuously that we would not be better. We would be far worse. We would be far more ordinary. And there are a lot of ordinary institutions out there. That's not what we want to be. And in this day and age, I have to tell you, it's not what I think kids need. So I'm not going to back down from our extraordinary ambition. And I'm not going to slow down and try to be less than so that it feels more fair with the other ordinary schools. Now, UVM you mentioned. UVM has a day school rate. My understanding is that it is highly, highly subsidized for in-state residents. So I guess you can look at it and say, on the face, the individual is paying less than the Burton tuition, but town tuition. It's actually subsidized by, hate to tell you, taxpayers.
The budget numbers were reviewed by Board Chairman Herb Ogden of Mount Tabor, who explained how the various tax rates were developed and the budget assembled.
Followed Act 46 when we could early on. We get a incentive this year of 8 cents off the tax rate. This decreases by 2 cents per year until we're down to no incentive. And finally, once you've applied that 8 cents, you wind up with line K, which is the residential adjusted equalized tax rate. If you have any questions just about the math here, please do raise your hand and maybe Oliver will call on you. Don't see any questions about the math. The next table.
There will be a quiz after this, by the way.
One of the concerns before the meeting was about the likely turnout of voters from all the various towns. Bus transportation to Floodbrook was offered from several of the towns to make it easier for voters to get there. An unofficial tally afterwards indicated that more than half the audience came from Londonderry and Manchester. The sites of the annual meeting will rotate around to the various towns in the future. Next year's meeting will take place in Manchester. Jim Salzgiver, one of the Taconic and Green board members, said he was pleased with how the inaugural annual meeting went.
I thought it went pretty well. I'm pleased that a number of people were here. I wish there were more, but we had pretty good representation. There were some good questions. There were some thoughtful questions. I think I had an opportunity. I think one of the benefits is that the presentation that was put together, the annual report, by the BRSU, a whole lot of work went in. The board was involved with, what would go in it and all, but they did a really good job, and I think it presents, key information that people need to understand in a very understandable way. It's not that easy to understand the school budgets or the tax situations, but I think it does a pretty good job of explaining. So hopefully, we didn't have as many questions as we might. Hopefully, because people, were able to understand it from that.
Voting for the Taconic and Green budget and other items on the warning will take place on Tuesday, March 6th, along with other town meeting voting at the various towns within the district. For the GNet TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.